There's times where I don't want to have a tough conversation with one of my teachers, a parent, a community member, not because I'm scared necessarily to have it, but I'm so worried that I'm going to destroy the trust and relationship. Obviously, you got to find the right time and right words, but waiting so long can actually destroy trust more than actually having the conversation.
It's the oxymoron because it comes from a place of consideration. I don't want to damage my relationship with this teacher, or I don't want this principal to think this or that.
Welcome to Change Starts Here, a FranklinCovey education podcast for K-12 leaders driving meaningful change through bold thinking, real stories, and proven strategies for lasting impact. Now here's your host, Dustin Odham.
Welcome to the Change Starts Here podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Odham. And today we're joined by someone whose work has helped leaders all over the world navigate difficult conversations. Todd Davis is a best-selling author, global thought leader, and senior consultant at FranklinCovey, where he and I first met. If you've been in education for any amount of time, you know that difficult conversations come with the territory. Whether it's a teacher who's struggling, a parent who's upset, or even between members of your own leadership team, how you handle those moments can make or break trust and your culture. I'm so excited for you to dive into this episode today and learn the steps and skills to help handle those moments with clarity, confidence, and care. Todd's wisdom has greatly impacted the way I lead, and I know it will do the same for you. Let's dive in. Todd, as I said in my intro, the opportunity to just be in your orbit is one of my favorite things in life. You've made a huge impact on me from going back to the time where you interviewed me to join here to where you've basically walked me through every difficult conversation I've had here for my 15 years. And so to have the opportunity to talk to you in a podcast is just really exciting. And I just want to say first, thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. You're very kind. I remember very specifically that first interview too. And honestly, the minute you left, I turned to Aaron Thompson, who is our director of recruitment. I said, we have got to get that guy. So it's a mutual admiration, but I really appreciate this opportunity to talk with you.
Well, now you can't get rid of me, unfortunately. So let's just start. My favorite question that I got from Brad Montague years ago, which is, who are you and what do you love about what you do?
Who am I? Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out now. What I love about, I remember when I was dating my now wife, and my father-in-law, who was kind of leery of me, was asked me what I wanted to do for a living. And I was this 23-year-old kid, and I said, well, I like to work with people. And he goes, well, everybody likes to work with people. What do you like to do? And I reflect back on that, and I love my father-in-law, but I that's what I love to do. I realized at an early age that I really enjoyed solving problems, and not math problems. In fact, that's the thing I'm worst at. But helping people solve problems. I don't know why. We just are drawn to things, each of us. And I have always been, even at a young age, drawn to helping my friends, early schoolmates, and that just kind of figure things out. And I enjoy being a sounding board. So I feel rewarded in those kind of roles.
That's great. Well, I think most people who have privilege to work with you and get to know you would say you are a phenomenal problem solver, particularly when it comes to people challenges. And one of the things as we dive into this topic of difficult conversations, I am curious. I don't think I've ever asked you this before. When you think about difficult conversations, was there a difficult conversation that you experienced early in your professional career that kind of changed your paradigm or changed your direction of how you were going to approach them?
Yeah, I can pick from several hundred. I do remember it was a difficult conversation. When I was younger, early on in my career, I worked at a place. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I worked at a big event center here, the Triad Center, and I was responsible for managing the events that would come in. And there was a theater group that used this big outdoor stage, and then there were smaller concert groups that would come in, and I was the operations person for that, and negotiating that and putting the calendar and the schedule together. And I remember, and again, I was in my mid 20s, late 20s, and there was a group coming in. A promoter that brought in these smaller rock bands. I think this outdoor seating held about 3,000 people, and there was also a Broadway show that was being put on there, and they were alternating nights. And anyway, long story short, there was a very difficult conversation between these two leaders, this promoter for these rock groups, and then this person who was running the theater productions. And there was a pretty big argument, and I was, probably at least 10, maybe 15 years younger than either one of them. And I was supposed to solve this problem. And I was in over my head. And these were both pretty hot-headed people. And so going back and forth and yelling, and they were arguing, and I asked if I could just talk with, and I'll just call him Joe. And I said, Joe, can I just talk to you for a minute? I went over, and Dustin, honestly, it's when I realized the value of listening, of empathy, just understanding. And I listened to Joe rant and rave and then I went over and I asked the other person, I'll call him Frank, and I said, Frank, could I just understand where you're coming from? And I listened to them, and I didn't have an immediate solution, but I was, and I didn't even realize it at the time. I'm not taking credit for this, but I realized later I was helping each one of them listen to each other in this roundabout way, because then I could go back to Joe and say, here's what Frank really needs, and here's what, even though you and I couldn't understand it with all of his arguing, and so I don't know if that's the best example, but it was where I understood that at the foundation of any difficult conversation, we got to start with understanding each other first. And that was at least one of my earliest memories in my adult life into how to make progress in a difficult situation, in a difficult conversation.
Well, I think it matters because at the time, it sounds like you didn't really have many levers to pull. So the lever was to listen and just kind of see where that took you, right?
I didn't have FranklinCovey content. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I just didn't want him to yell at me anymore.
Yeah. Well, you and I mean, we, for better or worse, we've been involved in a lot of, challenging conversations. And one of the things that you've always taught me is that avoiding conflict doesn't preserve peace. It destroys trust, right? So like, that's a simple way to put it. And so I guess, could you just explain why avoidance is so costly to culture and morale?
Yeah. In fact, you remind me of another example, but it wasn't early on in my career. I'm embarrassed to say it was like within the last 4 years, but it'll get to your exact point here. I had a conversation. I used to, as you know, run the people services team, is what we call our human resources department. And I was the chief people officer for, 18 years. And there was someone on our team, great person, but they had a behavior that I knew was not boding well for them. And it was starting to reflect on the department as well, something this person was doing. And and I was needing to bring it up to them. And here I am, the chief people officer, coaching you and other leaders how to have these conversations with your teams. And I was avoiding it. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to damage the relationship. And I was in the back of my mind, kind of hoping it would go away. That's how mature I was. Anyway, long story short, I finally had the conversation. And when I began the conversation, I said to this person, and I'll call them Joe. And I said, Joe, this is going to be a difficult conversation, but I need to bring something to your attention. And I said to them, I have been worried about this for 6 months, and I haven't wanted to damage our relationship. I haven't known how to bring it up, but I'm finally doing it. Anyway, we had the conversation, got through it, got to a better place. But Joe came back to me and said, can I tell you what was most hurtful? And I, what? And she said, you told me that you've known about this for 6 months, and that you and to know now that you let me look foolish for 6 months without bringing this to my attention. And boy, that was a 2x4 across the head, Dustin. Just saying, even though I've done this for a long time, it was once again a reminder of why putting off a difficult conversation is not helpful. They're uncomfortable. Nothing we're going to talk about today is going to make them easy, but I hope we are going to talk about how to construct them so that they're doable and that we can actually get to a better place.
Yeah, I think, often in education, we, including myself, right? So you're just describing time when you did it. Like there's times where I don't want to have a tough conversation with one of my teachers, a parent, a community member, not because I'm scared necessarily to have it, but I'm so worried that I'm going to destroy the trust and relationship. And it's ironic through that example, it sounds like that pause, that long, I mean, obviously you got to find the right time and right words, but waiting so long can actually destroy trust more than actually having the conversation. Is that right?
You're exactly right. It's the oxymoron, because it comes from a place, in most cases, it comes from a place of consideration. I don't want to damage my relationship with this teacher, or I don't want this principal to think this or that. And so I'm so considerate, worried about that, but it's actually the least considerate thing we can do is to put off something that is driving a wedge between us or causing more of a problem.
So I'm curious how you would answer this. You've had, a number of difficult conversations you've been a part of. What do you think truly makes a conversation difficult?
Yeah. It's very clear to me now. It wasn't always clear. It wasn't clear back when I was negotiating between those two hotheads. It's because there's always something important at stake. It's not just this transactional something about, organizing somebody's day or whatever. There's something important at stake. And whenever something important is at stake, we have emotion. We're human beings. We have emotions. And so if I'm a parent, I've got to talk to this teacher about my son or daughter is struggling with their style. I don't want to offend this teacher and risk him or her being upset with my student the rest of the year. And plus, I don't want to offend them just because I'm hopefully a good human being. There's always something important at stake, and therefore it brings in our emotions.
To that point, you said teacher performance is something we talk about. Parent complaints, right, is something normal. Student behavior is a challenge. Sometimes you want to address it. And so from your lens, what dynamics tend to make these kind of situations spiral, right? Like I understand why I need to lean in, but when
Yeah.
you have these tense conversations, what are things that cause those tough conversations to spiral out of control the most quickly?
Yeah. Well, again, because human beings are wired to be reactive. That's how our brains are wired. We're wired to react when something feels unsafe or unsure, or we feel attacked in some way. We go into survival mode. It's how our ancestors survived, fight or flight. And so emotions come to the surface, and you say something to me that triggers me, or I say something to you that triggers you. And all of a sudden, instead of listening to you and understanding and thinking, gosh, I wonder what I've done that's making Dustin feel that way, I'm in defense mode. I'm thinking, well, what's he really trying to do? Or why is he putting me down? Or why is she saying this? Or what? And so our brains are wired to react. And if we can be mindful of that, we can get ahead of it.
That's great. But I mean, you and I are probably, we've learned over time we have some similar wiring. And so both of us care deeply.
You flatter me if you say I have similar wiring. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
You and I both care deeply about the people we're talking to, right? We really do. And we're sensitive, right? Even if it can't seem in the moment, like we do care. We don't want to hurt anybody. We want what's best for them. And so it's hard to check those emotions in the moment. How do you kind of navigate keeping your heart there, right? And keeping in the moment with not having such a reactive or a strong reaction or taking things too personally?
Yeah. I have found, like with anything in life, planning. Now, sometimes a difficult conversation, but it's rare that a difficult conversation is a surprise, comes at you out of the blue. If you're the one initiating it, just to plan for it. And like we're talking right now and recognizing, okay, if he says this, how am I going to react? Is that going to make me feel defensive? And thinking through those reactions that I might have. And more importantly, or as important, thinking through the reactions that he or she might have. So as I'm preparing for a difficult conversation with my principal, and I'm thinking, okay, if I put myself in his place or her place, and I say it this way, how would I feel? And again, this isn't just theoretical. This is exactly what I do when I'm planning for a difficult conversation. And I say this with humility, but I got my PhD in difficult conversations during 18 years of being a chief people officer. And so thinking ahead, how would that make me feel? And nobody has a crystal ball, but I can think of a way, gosh, if I say it this way to Dustin, that would make me feel bad. What if I say it this way? How can I get the point across and make the person I'm talking with as least defensive as possible? You and I both know when we are feeling defensive, even if we think we're hiding it, our brain isn't hearing, we're not able to really focus on what the person is saying. We're in protective mode, we're in defensive mode. And so the least the more we can lower the other person's defenses. And again, not going overboard with saying I got to be so considerate that the message never gets through, but the more we can lower the other person's defenses, the more they're able to hear what we're talking about.
Yeah, that one is tough too. This whole courage consideration thing, right? Of how do I make sure that they know that we care, but not so much to where we don't give them the feedback. You taught me years ago that I guess I've been here about 15 years now almost. you taught me that feedback was a gift, right? I was struggling with thinking how to engage with one of my client partners, and you said feedback's a gift, and you like made a joke about something like most people try to return it. It's good, and so just a very Todd Davis type thing. So how can we help leaders reframe feedback so it becomes a tool for progress as opposed to something I have to do?
Yeah. Well, it's the whole essence of getting better. I mean, how can I possibly improve? We all have blind spots. The most accomplished president of a company or CEO or whatever however you deem success, the most accomplished people have blind spots and gaps where they need to improve. And how could I ever know about those unless someone, a trusted partner like Dustin or someone, has the courage and the consideration, they care enough about me to share that with me. And that's the essence of it. It's this balance. You said it just a minute ago. It's this balance of courage and consideration. And if my motives are sincere, most considerate thing I can do is to point something out to you that maybe you're not seeing. And it's the most important thing for me to remember. If you're sharing something with me, Dustin, in fact, I had someone in our company after I use humor in a lot of what I do, and I had someone who was pretty new to the company, and they called me after a town hall, and they said, "Hey, Todd, you joke about this topic that I brought up, and I worry that some people might think that you don't take that topic very seriously, the thing I was joking about." And and boy, it stung. And my immediate reaction, and here I am, supposedly this mature chief people officer, and I thought, well, you son of a gun, who are you to come in here for 2 months and judge me and thinking but but I realized as I got to know this person more, they just cared about me and they cared about our company. And they were a fresh look saying, I wonder if some people might think that. So it was a great pause. It was great time for me to pause and reflect and say, I need to, I didn't necessarily agree with the person, but I thought it's a really good point of view. And so if we can look at feedback, just like you wouldn't be offended if I said, "Hey, Dustin, you got a little piece of lettuce in your teeth or something." Yeah, glad you got it. Um, and so think about feedback as people just trying to help. Assume good intent. That's what I want to say. Assume good intent. People, yeah, there are some bad people out there, but there are few and far between. Most people just want to help. So when people are giving you feedback, even if it's not delivered in the most articulate, well-versed way, assume good intent. They just want to help.
Well, you and I have danced around already today, this phrase courage and consideration. So can we just again land the plane for folks who have
You
heard
bet.
us just keep dancing around it? What does it actually mean?
Yeah. So the whole foundation of any meaningful conversation, but particularly a difficult conversation, is this balance of courage and consideration. Courage, what is my purpose? What is it that I need out of this conversation? And consideration, what is my positive intent? What do I want to make sure this person knows? And so we balance our courage and consideration in any difficult conversation when we think about and articulate our purpose and then our positive intent, and in that order. And let me tell you why, because I used to do the opposite, and I had other people when I'm preparing for this difficult conversation with Dustin. Okay, and he's my principal, and I'm a teacher working in his district, and I something that he's doing is rubbing some of the other teachers wrong, and none of them have had the courage to bring this up to him. It's tempting for me to say, "Hey, Dustin, first of all, I want to tell you how wonderful you are. We love you so much. You're so awesome." We all want to do that because we want to soften the blow. But I'll tell you, it's really confusing to people when you're having an important conversation to not start with purpose. So be encouraged, and I encourage people to say, "Hey, Dustin, I'd like to talk to you about something that's a little bit difficult for me to share, but I wanted to let you know it's something that I believe you're not aware of, and I wanted to bring it to your attention. And if you are aware of it, then please forgive me. But I just want you to know there's a behavior of yours that is, I think it's unintentionally, but it's offending some of the other teachers. Would you be okay if I share this with you? Otherwise, I have seen people dance around an issue, and you're sitting there as the recipient going, "Am I getting promoted? Am I getting fired? What are you talking about here?" So always start with purpose and then go right to positive intent. And Dustin, I want you to know the only reason I'm bringing this up, I love our relationship. I care deeply about the school and how we're moving forward. And I care most deeply about you as our leader. Please know that's the only reason I'm bringing this up. That's an example of purpose and positive intent. And it's the most effective way to start any difficult conversation It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it constructive, and we can build upon that.
Well, I think, what I like about it is you just described the word build, right? So as I'm receiving that, it's like, oh, I got chopped down because you got to give some feedback and I'm terrified. But as you're giving me the feedback, it's clear that you're for me. And so then I'm able to build up and kind of like fill in the gaps that I had versus like, tell me I'm great, I'm great, I'm great. And I'm like, well, what am I fixing then? Right.
Yeah, they talk about, people talk about the sandwich, the feedback that's put in between they sandwich it in between these two nice, I say a nice thing, I give you the feedback, and then I say the other nice thing. And it's so confusing, and worse, sometimes people don't even hear the feedback. We hear what we want to hear. You just said a minute ago, this word feedback. I like to begin by reminding people where the word feedback comes from. Feed means to nourish, to sustain, to foster, and back means to support. So just reminding people that I'm here to help. I care about you. Right now, somebody says to me, "Hey, Todd, have you got a few minutes? I got some feedback for you." And I'm thinking, "Oh crap, what did I do wrong now?" Just like you said a minute ago. But again, backing up and remembering that, hey, feedback, we're all here to help each other. We want to create this culture of feedback in the district, in the school, and wherever we're operating.
Yeah, I think, I'm curious because I think both of us we've talked ad nauseum in past conversations where our struggles are, but I think leaders probably tend to lean too far, sometimes courage without compassion or compassion without clarity. Do you notice like when this happens most commonly or what types of conversations folks generally tend to lean one way or the other, or is it really just personality driven and whatever their present comfort zone?
Yeah. In my experience, and this may not be true across all areas, but in my experience, when a leader, when a leader, let's assume the leader is the one initiating the conversation. When a leader is feeling, sometimes when a leader is feeling less secure or less confident in themselves, they tend to overdo it on the courage side. It's kind of the makeup thing we do. I've seen that time and time again. And so if I'm really sincere about navigating a difficult conversation effectively, and I'm the leader, I need to ask myself, wait a minute, am I trying to make up for something here, or am I trying, where is my heart? Am I really sincere in this? Do I really care about her or his performance and what we're trying to accomplish here? So I think we got to get really clear about ourselves. That's the primary thing. I have seen really good people get out of balance with their courage or the consideration. And usually when I'm insecure myself, I think I'm balancing it, but I'm really trying to cover it up with too much courage or too much directness, not enough of the consideration, and making sure that the person is knowing how much I value them.
That's super helpful. I think you've talked about a framework. I think this is right. Like pause, observe, ask. Is that right?
Well, yeah, the framework that we use now, and that I used for years, and I don't take credit for this, but now it's in a learnable framework, is that the foundation is courage and consideration, and we start that with expressing our purpose and our positive intent. And then, we're off to the races. The conversation starts. And what most people, not all, but most people have the hardest time with is getting the conversation going. Well, that's the way to get it going. But now what do I do? Now the emotions show up. And the challenge is none of us has a crystal ball. I don't have any idea how he's going to react or what she's going to say. And so pausing, not panicking, observing, not judging, and asking, not assuming. Those are three tools. You don't need to use them 1, 2, 3. You may only use one, you may use a combination of them, but those are three magnificent tools to help us right size the plane again, to get back to this balance of courage and consideration throughout the conversation. There is nothing wrong if Dustin and I are having a heated a conversation and it's getting heated, and Dustin said, "Well, I disagree with you, Todd. I think because this and this and this and this." There's nothing wrong with me saying, "Gosh, Dustin, I can see this is really upsetting. I just want to pause for a couple of minutes here. I'd like to think about some of the things we've talked about so far. Would that be okay?"
Yeah.
I used to think, well, you just got to keep going. You can't stop the conversation, but there's nothing wrong. In fact, there's something very human about saying, "Hey, this doesn't feel like we're heading in the right direction. I'd like to pause for a few minutes. In fact, could we pick this up this afternoon? Depending on what the situation is, it shows respect, I think, certainly for the other person, but for you too, to say, I would really like to get my head around a couple of things that we've shared here. Can we come back to this? Observe, don't judge. Ask, don't assume. So, Dustin, even though we've worked together for 15 years, what I hear you saying, because where my mind might go with someone I've known for so long is, oh, I know what she's doing now, or I know what he's saying now. Throw that out and just say, hey, what I hear you saying is you did this because of this and this and this. Am I understanding that correctly? For any of those who are listening that are familiar with the 7 habits of highly effective people, and I hope everyone is, habit number 5, seek first to understand. It is, all the habits are powerful. It is so powerful. No matter how well we think we know someone, no matter how well we have already decided, I'll say this, and then I bet they're going to say this. Act like it's the first time you've met them and just be curious. Move from I bet to I wonder. I bet he's going to say this to, gosh, I wonder what's causing this, frustration in him right now.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like you said, it's so hard when you've known someone for so long,
Really
right?
hard.
Because like there's some strength to knowing our tendencies, right? But there's also a massive weakness because there might be a story I'm trying to like convey to you that you can't hear because it's counter to like a experience you've had with me or what you've known in my personality. I'm genuinely trying to process it and can't. How do you create space for that? Like, do you have a tool where it's like, I'm going to do some breathing. I'm going to do something to get into this space before I get on a call?
Well, again, I'll go back to what I said a minute ago. It is preparation before the conversation, because I'm as human as you are, and even though I've been in a role where listening and navigating difficult conversations was one of my primary functions, if I haven't prepared before the conversation, my human nature, I default into that. So to your question, I've got to think before that call. Okay, if it starts to go into this, what am I going to do? I got to decide right now, Todd, what am I going to do if it starts to lean this way or that way? And I have found great success when I do that. No matter how long I've known the person, I'm able to say, so Sheila, what I hear you saying is that you have never enjoyed working with so and so because of this and this and this. Do I have that right? Even though I've known Sheila forever. And I'll tell you, there have been times when somebody who I thought I knew really well has said, no, that's not exactly right, Todd. What I'm saying is, and it's a marvelous gift to give yourself, just to hear for the first time from someone that you think you know so well, to push, suspend. Dr. Covey used to use this phrase all the time. Suspend those judgments, those feelings, those opinions long enough to really hear the other person.
Well, before we close out, I want to make this as practical as possible for the people listening. And so I've just got 3 quick examples. So let's say we have a principal out there listening. And in our world in education, I mean, I think I saw a statistic a few years ago that says 95 or 96% of all teachers receive satisfactory progress on their year-to-year performance, right? And so if you think about that, there's not a lot of feedback probably given, because it doesn't mean the teachers aren't amazing. It's just that they're not getting regular feedback, but told they're doing anything besides being great. And so knowing that's the culture many principals are in, what steps should someone take if they're going to get ready for a hard conversation this week with a teacher around feedback? You can repeat the same steps because I think it's so powerful, but what steps would you suggest they take?
Yeah. Well, I've never been a principal. I've been in many a principal's office as a student. and unfortunately, I was in many a principal's office with my kids when they were students. But I can imagine, and I've met many wonderful, wonderful principals that all you work with and that our organization works with. But if I were a principal heading into a difficult conversation with a teacher, and again, the scenario that you set up, I've got this teacher and he's great or she's wonderful, but we all have areas for improvement. I would begin the conversation that way. I think we worry too much, Dustin, about, I got to say this just right, instead of just saying what's in our heart. So if I were the principal, I would say, hey, Joe, thanks for taking time to meet with me. First of all, and this isn't, I am starting with positive intent here because you said that this is a good teacher, but it's just we all have areas for improvement. So I would say, you do a marvelous job. And with each of the teachers I'm meeting with, I'm giving them one area to focus on. And again, I'm learning all the time too. I think it's really important when we're giving someone feedback that we also share feedback we've been given. It makes us human too, so they don't feel embarrassed or like, oh, well, you're so perfect. No, my district leader is giving me feedback, and I'm finding one area in the spirit of helping everyone improve. Okay, so please know that. So what I've observed with you, you do so many things so well. One thing that I think you could improve in is, and then bring it up. But I would just speak what's in our heart. So and going back through the steps, balance courage and consideration, and observe and ask. Don't assume. Don't judge. Those things that we've talked about. People want to get better. People all want to know that people care about them. And if I sense you as my principal care deeply about my success, and say it. I can't tell you, Dustin, how many times I've said to employees at FranklinCovey, I want you to know the only reason I'm bringing this up, I care deeply about your success. I care deeply about you knocking it out of the park in this role that you're in. Please know that's my intent. And it's got to be sincere. But if that's the principal's intent, man, even though I'm the teacher, then I get the feedback and it might sting a little bit, more than the sting, I so appreciate that I'm working with someone who cares about my ongoing success.
Mm. Well, another doozy that we deal with from time to time, my wife, so I think you remember, is the chief of staff of a school district here in St.
I
Louis. And
do remember.
we've got some friends who are superintendents and assistant soups. And one of the difficult conversations that many of those leaders find themselves in is either with upset parent groups or upset board members, right? And so navigating those conversations, I'm curious what your best advice is to help, my wife or other folks feel anchored and authentic in approaching those conversations. And what I mean by that is a lot of times you may approach it, be like, I just got to get out of this conversation quickly. I'm going to say, yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm going to move on. Right. And that you may miss the chance to really shift paradigms. So I think it's really important to be able to sit in those really uncomfortable times and be anchored and authentic. So what advice do you have to try to navigate those challenging circumstances?
Yeah, and I know I'm just referring to our content, but I've been here for 30 years, so it's kind of become who I am. You asked me at the very first of this podcast or this interview, who am I? I am, and I say this with gratitude. I am someone who loves and tries to live, and I fall down a lot. Tries to live our content, but I go to habit two, begin with the end in mind right now. And I'm picturing if I were in your wife's position, or I were in with a parent teacher conference, a bunch of upset parents. I would want to pause the meeting. And I would say, hey, could I take a few minutes and let you know why I got into the education profession, or why I'm doing what I'm doing? And I don't believe there's a person in this room, and I'm just making this up here, but I believe there's a person in this room that doesn't care deeply about Billy or Susie's success. I think that's why we're all here. So I just want to step back from it and remind you all, let you all know. See, even to remind you can make people defensive. It sounds like so I just want to let you all know from the bottom of my heart, I care deeply about your kids, or about your, this parent group or whatever. I care about that. And while I know we have different approaches, and that's what we're talking here, I just want to step back and realize I think we all have the same end in mind here, and that is to have, these kids do well in school. I think, boy, certainly in education, but just for the world right now, think about what's going on in our nation here in the US and everywhere. If people could just, and I know it says easy, does hard, but but I try and practice that, and I've seen the payoff from that. Just being real with people, saying, hey, sounds like we're at odds, on how we go about this. I just want you to know I care about you, and I care about us getting to the end point we're trying to get to. So I want to make sure I'm understanding you. Um, and once I've done that, I hope you'll take time to understand me, and I think we can get to a good solution.
Yeah,
That's
I
what,
would say, I think it sounds more times than not, that's going to expose other people's intent and get everybody on a level playing field, right? So it's like, all
right.
right, we're
The
on the same
reset.
page. Let's figure this out, right?
The reset. Yep.
Yeah. So we have a number of folks, obviously, your educators listening, but also parents. And as I think about my three little ones, their pictures are all right in front of me here. Um, I want them to learn this skill set early, that disagreements doesn't mean you have to have disconnection, right? So, like arguments with friends, challenging conversations with friends or teachers or other adults, does not mean that you're in trouble or that you can't have that relationship, or, the relationship is fractured. What advice do you have to help create an environment where kids understand that, like, disagreements are healthy and they can be done in a healthy way?
Yeah. just asking yourself, have we all had the exact same experience of the 10 kids in this room or the 20 teachers that are here? And the answer is obviously no. So we all bring different life experience. Not one wasn't necessarily wrong or right. They're just different. We all come at this from a different perspective. Now, if the disagreement is, I want Johnny to succeed, well, I want Johnny to fail. Okay, well then, yeah, you aren't someone I choose to work with, or but we're not going to run into that. We're going to no. We want all these kids to succeed, or we want all these teachers to continue to go on and go. And so we have that same purpose. And so my advice, and I realize I'm talking really high level here, but it's a recognition, it's a self-awareness, it's holding up the mirror and saying, what do I really care about here? I want to share my opinion and my experience respectfully, but I also want to hear Dustin's experience respectfully. If I really care about the success of this district or this school or this teacher or this parent group, so it's looking in the mirror and being very self-aware. And I don't know a magic formula for that other than asking yourself that, reminding yourself of that every day, making sure that I'm living with integrity, that I'm really looking for the best in this situation.
Well, I have two questions before you leave. One is selfishly for me, you just talked about every day. Is there any practices or habits that you have on a daily basis to help level set yourself? I mean, for years and years, I think it was 18, you're the chief people officer. You have no idea. I mean, you could be able to plan for a number of your conversations, but there were so many, I'm sure, that happened in a given day that you couldn't plan for because they just happened on the moment. What disciplines did you have in your life to help level set you so that you weren't rocked with the crazy waves or the loops of the roller
Yeah.
coaster ride that you were
Yeah.
on?
Well, I get rocked easily and I fall down and I'm certainly not perfect, but I appreciate you asking that because I do have a couple of morning rituals just in my when I get up and when I exercise and do those things. And I have some reminders there that remind me of who I am or who I want to be at my core, including my password to log into my computer is a word just to remind me, i- in essence, to overshare here, but in essence, to live with integrity. And those three words help ground me. And again, I fall down all the time. I make mistakes all the time, but I try and reset every day, every morning, to be the person that I want that I want to really be.
Well, I would say we talk about as an organization living our content in a way like we can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. And through that, we can inspire other people to live differently. If anybody asked me in my time here, who is that person for me, it has always been you, Todd. And so I just thank you for every day waking up and getting prepared to just love and serve people in a way that I think I bet you have changed a number of people's paradigms of how they need to change themselves living, not the company, the organization, but just looking in the mirror so that they can love and serve people differently. And I just want to thank you here publicly for that.
Well, you are very kind, and I've had millions of people do that for me too. So you're very kind. Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
before I get you out of here, is there anything that you want to leave us with, or are we good there? I did my best to make sure I asked all my favorite questions.
Uh, Any parting thoughts? No, I had someone ask me, I was doing an interview the other day and someone asked me to leave a specific parting thought, and it was kind of put me on the spot. But I actually I was following a motorhome towing a boat and a bunch of I was following this thing the other day and they had a bumper sticker. It was in humor, and the bumper sticker on the back of all these RV toys said, "He who dies with the most toys wins," or something like that, which is making fun of all these things that this person was towing down the road. And I thought about that, and I was jealous of all the things they had. But then I thought, you know, I hope my bumper sticker is, "He or she who dies with the most meaningful relationships wins." I mean, at the end of the day, and you've been talking about them this whole time, the relationships between, teachers and their principals, or between parents and the students, or between parents and the teachers. At the end of the day, it's about relationships. Relationships matter. And if we can ground ourselves in that, and while we all see things so differently, but have respect and appreciation for each other, I think we're going to always be able to get to a much better place.
I love it. Well, Todd, thank you so much for being here with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank
The background looks great. Thank you for making the adjustments needed. I hope our
you.
paths get to cross again very soon.
Thanks, Dustin. I appreciate it.
All right, Todd, thanks. This was such a great episode today. I hope you walk away feeling the same way I do after a conversation with Todd. I always feel more intentional and more grounded. Todd's perspective on trust, feedback, and how we show up in challenging moments is something that I think every leader can utilize. Before you head out, I would just say, let's keep the conversation going. Comment below on one mindset shift from today's episode that you'll carry into your next conversation. And if you haven't already, please be sure to follow, subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's coming next. We have incredible guests and practical insights ahead. As always, thank you for listening. Remember, real trust is built through one honest conversation at a time. Thanks for listening.
FranklinCovey Education is a trusted partner in developing leaders from the classroom to the boardroom in over 8,000 schools in over 70 countries.